been a little bit. Car's been sitting, it's been cold. I had a lot of issues with it this year. I did record some videos, went on cool trips. I wanted to do more video making, but just life got in the way, got busy. I started going back to school, so there's just a lot going on right now. But let's do a recap of the season and what I plan to do for next season, and I'm gonna try to do it on the cheap end. I put way too much money into this thing recently, and I want to see what you can do for the cheap, either Goblin related or just normal race car related. So let's jump into what I did this season. So before the season started, I made a lot of changes. I installed a fuel tech as well as a fully redone wiring harness that I did myself. I went through the process of designing it. It was a really cool learning experience. If I would do it again, there are things that I would change. I would try to make it neater. The Goblin is very tight on the space, so I would have to use some thinner wires and figure out that kind of engineering aspect to making a full motorsport harness. The second thing I did over the winter is I worked on the engine, and we took it to get dyno tuned. We got brand new Hoosier tires. One of the final changes that actually happened mid-season is Doyle Fabrication. They came out with a tubular subframe that I believe without a sway bar saves 32 pounds off of the old subframe. So less weight in the rear, makes it a little bit more balanced. I mean, it's only 30 pounds, so how much does it really change? But the biggest upgrade to that subframe is just how rigid the car feels in the rear. There's no longer that kind of, it's hard to explain, but it's kind of like a rubbery squish to either side before. And then the final thing, I got a Category 5 Portworx ported head for the car just before dynoing it. All right, let's talk more about this dyno session. So I took the car to a well-known guy in the area. He goes by Bluetunes EFI, John Beluza. He's a really great guy. I took the car there first thing after having the fuel tech installed, and we got up to 307 horsepower with 260 foot-pounds of torque in a car that only weighs 1,700 pounds with me in it. It's absolutely insane. It's almost too much, and the supercharger just brings the power on so hard that sometimes it's difficult to wrangle it in. But here's our dyno run for the 307 horsepower. So not even 2 days after that dyno run, I was already beating on the car. The first event for our Susquehanna Autocross, the car felt really good. It drove great. The pedal is incredibly touchy. Like, if you're not paying attention or have really good foot control, the car likes to kind of oscillate when you're driving. So like, it'll kick and it'll pull your foot off the pedal and it kind of starts jumping back and forth, kind of like when you first learn a manual. I've been driving manual for 8 years now, and this thing just has too much power than what it's good for. It pulls you off of the gas pedal unless you're fully committed. And in autocross, there's a lot of mid-throttle sections, so you gotta have good control in the midsection. This is a returning theme for multiple of my race sessions this season, and eventually I did modify the pedal, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But here's our first Susquehanna Autocross where it started to rain and then the car just shut off. All right, after that, first autocross at Susquehanna in the rain, which it always seems like it's in the rain on the first event. We went out to the Northeast Pennsylvania region, NEPA, the Mohegan Sun Arena, towards the end of May. I enjoy the arena. It's a really large parking lot with like big hills all around the place. It's fun. You could kind of lose the cones a lot, but in this one, I was just fighting with the throttle being really touchy still. I didn't think to mess with it yet. So here's the run from NEPA. Now, NEPA's really fun because they have an actual racetrack that we do autocross at. So later on in June, they do a full weekend event. So it's Friday through Sunday, where you can camp out at the track and you do autocross on both days. It's, I believe, the same course, they just run it backwards. I could be wrong. This event was really special to me because my dad came along and I got to give him a ride in the Goblin for the first time, and my grandfather, he also came along. He didn't go for a ride, but even though he's not into racing, he really, really enjoyed the event. It was awesome spending time with them for Father's Day weekend, even if it was doing something that I enjoy. But once we got back into the mindset of things, I went to Autocross at Susquehanna again in the beginning of July, which I'm used to Susquehanna. A lot of people are scared of it. I don't find it that scary. A lot of people are scared of all the bollards and they have like these drainage ditches between the parking lots. But I actually got 15th raw on the track on a run where my GoPro decided to eject itself from the car and go flying out the side of the track. So here's that video now. So I actually got, for the next event at NEPA Mohegan Sun Arena, so just like earlier, I had a really, really talented local driver. His name is Justin Peachey. He has a red Corvette that's all liveried up for Hawk brake pads and all that. He's been to the Freedom Factory and beat Cletus in his Porsche. He's been ice racing. He's been all over the place. He's a crazy, crazy good driver, and he jumps in all sorts of things. Well, his car is broken. He asked if he could co-drive with me. So we went to Mohegan Sun, and he's on a whole nother level. I have like so much to learn, and I learned a ton from him. He originally was really frustrated with the car. He kept spinning it because of how touchy the throttle is, because as I said, that mid-range is really important, and this car is kind of all and nothing with the throttle. But in the end, I got to drive and Peachey got to drive on the new Hoosier slicks, and I was about 3 seconds behind him. Nothing crazy. He raw timed like 7th. For everyone there, he was the 7th fastest in this car that he never drove before, which is nutty because this is a lot of car to drive. So after Mohegan, I knew I had to do something about how touchy this pedal was. You'd be on it and it would be on-off. It would kick you in the back and then your foot would fly off the pedal and then you get back on, and trying to hold light throttle is really, really difficult in this car. You have to be very committed to driving this car. So I came home, I modified the pedals, I moved them because my brake pedal was up really high. So they're all kind of in line now. They're kind of at an uncomfortable position, which we'll talk about later when I tear the car down. I haven't touched it since I parked it because I got really frustrated with it for a little bit. But we're back. We're gonna try to do little finishing touches type of things. I went back to one more Autocross. The setup is still stock subframe, and everything is the same except I made the pedal a little stiffer. I put a big spring on the pedal, so it's just a bit tougher to push. It's a very strong spring. I'm not quite sure what it's for. I just picked it up at the auto parts store. And this event felt amazing. I had so much control in the car. It was a beautiful day, and I actually got 17th raw time, which I'm pretty happy with. Out of 125 people, 17th on the raw times feels amazing. This car should be capable of just smashing it, but we have some really fast guys in the Susquehanna region. I did a 40.56. Here is that run. So finally, the big event of the year that I was super, super excited for and working on the car a ton to make sure it could last is called Mid-Atlantic Car Fest. It's run by a bunch of my buddies here in the Susquehanna region. It is essentially drag week, but a track/autocross racers drag week. It is the best event. If they're watching this video, I thank you for putting it on. I plan to do it more. They thought I was crazy driving this with no body in October. It was a little chilly, but it wasn't too bad. It was actually a ton of fun. So Mid-Atlantic Car Fest is you start at an oval track, then you have to drive your race car to a track day at Dominion Raceway. Then from Dominion, we stayed there overnight. You drove the next day about, I think it was 2.5, 3 hours to a drag strip, Mason-Dixon Dragway. Ton of fun. I've never been to a drag strip. That was a new experience. I have videos for all of these. Then we drove to Autocross at the Mid-State Airport, which is the central Pennsylvania region. This place is crazy. It's like straight out of Doom or like any sort of old video game. You're just in this big open field with like tree walls all around you. It's an old airport that's still in use. So you'd be doing autocross and they'd have to pause for a plane landing, which is kind of crazy. And then finally was the biggest event of the weekend was the Tracksprint at Pocono Raceway. Let's go through at the oval. The track day was on the same day at the same place. It was at Dominion. I learned that this car makes a lot of heat when you're on full gas for a long time. I also learned that Virginia does not have much E85, which we are tuned for E85 now, which is fine because I have flex fuel, but it's tuned for E85 and it does corrections for the flex fuel. So we did the track day, which is incredible. I'm gonna definitely do more track days. You can see my video where I did 1 or 2 laps where I stayed behind someone kind of learning the ropes, and as I'm starting to put the hammer down, I can't shift anymore because my shifter cable melted going down the back straight, all the heat out the exhaust, and I guess the heat wrap that I put on there wasn't good enough. So unfortunately, first day of Mid-Atlantic Car Fest, I can't drive the car. It's stuck in second gear. So I'm sitting there in the pits. I only did 1 run at the track day. You get like 3 different sessions. I'm annoyed. I'm a little upset because I have the car broken. So I'm there trying to loosen up the shifter, and I could get it to move a little bit. It's just kind of spongy. And real nice guy. His name is Scott Bowers. He comes over and he's like, here, why don't you drip some oil down through the shift cable? So we did that, drip a little oil on the shaft of the shifter cable, work it back and forth, and we did that for a while. And it still has that broken shifter cable, but it's working great now. Now, granted, it's probably not super great. I do have a new one to replace it, I just haven't yet. So that's what happened at the track, just a melted shifter cable, got it fixed, we're fine. Drove to the drag strip the next day, and you're like, oh, this thing makes 300 horsepower, only 1,700 pounds. It should be really quick. It's a flying brick. You go down the drag strip, and you get first, second, third, it's moving. Third, it's slow. It starts go, and same with the track day. There was no E85 either, so I had 93 in the tank, which makes, I think it's like 265 horsepower. I could look up the number, I'll flash it on screen. Which is fine, but it's not made for that, so it's making a lot of heat, and that's part of the reason why I think the shifter cable melted on the track, because I was on 93. So I'm looking on my phone, and I see that there's a E85 Sheets about, I don't know, 25 minutes away down the highway. So I quickly grab one of Justin Peachey's fuel jugs. He brought a trailer with his Corvette, which is awesome. And I emptied it into my buddy Jeff's car. Then we emptied my tank to about 2 gallons. I drove to the gas station to get E85, came back to the drag strip, and we ran a full second faster. We ran a 13.19 at 100 miles per hour in the quarter mile. Before it was a 14.2. A full second for E85. That's crazy. I don't understand how 20, 30 horsepower makes that big of a difference. I guess it does when it's only 300 horsepower, but that was a cool trip. Took my buddy Will for a ride. He said this thing's nutty. Everyone loves the car. It's great. And but yeah, that was the drag strip. It's a lot of fun. After the drag strip, we pack up and we drive to Altoona through the mountains from Maryland all the way to Altoona. We're taking these back toge roads. It's a ton of fun. I have some clips of that. And we stay in Altoona for the night because it's close to our next destination. So here's some video through the hills. So the third day of Mid-Atlantic Car Fest was the first autocross event of the trip, which is, we're all autocross guys doing this for the most part. It's at Mid-State Airport, a old school airport for like private pilots and whatnot. And this is where the first major issue comes in, where I do one full run. It's really slick, but I'm getting the hang of it. Second run, driving through, and pop! No more to go. I didn't snap an axle. I overextended an axle and it broke. It blew the U-joints out. And we're at this airport in the middle of nowhere. So here's my first run, followed by the second run where I blow the axle. So after we blew this axle out at an airport in the middle of nowhere is where the true camaraderie of the Mid-Atlantic Car Fest event came in. I was there with mostly people I knew, but not like closely knew. And they're like, oh yeah, just take my car, run down to the local parts store, get yourself a new axle. We'll wait here until you get it fixed. We went to an auto parts store. They didn't have it. They ordered it in from another store. Came in like 4.5 hours later. We put the new axle in. Once we get back up to the airport, it's too short by about like, I don't know, half an inch. It's not gonna work. And I didn't realize it, but the upright got bent when it broke the first time. These guys just jump into action. Dave Myers, he just pulls out a grinder, cuts out half an inch off the top of his jack handle, and we use it as a spacer just to get the car home with the axle. This wasn't the last event of the whole event. We still had to go to Pocono, and we were on our way to Pocono, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go home. Unfortunately, drove the Goblin home, parked it in the garage. I have a picture of it, all sad in the garage. And then we hopped in my daily driver, the Chevy Cruze, drove to Pocono. My buddy, Bob Schiffer, he owns a blue Goblin. His is an LSJ, but he has a turbo and makes 100 more horsepower than I do. He's like, yeah, just drive my Goblin. I'm like, are you sure? This is a track event, like, you need a fire suit and all this, and like, there's walls. He's like, yeah, whatever, it's just a car. So, shout out to Bob. Thank you so much.